We are back, I guess. Technical glitch here, and we got cut off while thankfully while running the warm up trailer. So no big loss, but I'm hoping everybody finds their way over. Obviously, it's getting recorded, so we put it up on YouTube afterwards, anyways. But hopefully, a few people will find this new stream instead of the old one, which obviously is now no longer running.
Hmm.
How are you doing? You're back in
Yeah,
at home.
back at home in Europe, and I have to say the weekend provided us with Austin-like temperatures, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So we
it
got used
went
to
up
it.
to like 38 degrees Celsius here. I'm not
Yeah.
sure how it was for you, Alex, but it was pretty hot.
It was very hot. Yeah, we had a pretty hot Saturday. Yesterday was not too bad, but Saturday
Hmm.
was pretty intense, and I got lots of pictures from friends at various stages of pool.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
it's good.
yeah.
Did you go
I think
swimming?
that's no. We just did at home. So the my daughter went swimming on Saturday, but we stayed mostly at home and try to stay cool as such.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
But at least in the evening, we had similar effects like our American friends have shared in the past, where the smoke from the large forest fires in Brandenburg actually went all the way down here. So
Oh
like
yeah, yeah.
they went crossed like 200 kilometers and south, and so actually it was smoky here as well. So what our friends in Colorado, Montana, and California
Oh
usually
yes,
share that, or
yeah.
from Australia share from. So climate change is here, friends, and so we should stop using fossil fuels. So that's the person who just flew to the US and back, and so this was really
Well, yeah. That's,
um, yeah. But otherwise, I have to say it was really great being in Austin, seeing all the people in person. Some, of course, an reunion, but for others it was actually new. So we had a lot of folks, even from Neo4j, that I've worked with for 3 years now, and that I've seen for the first time,
exactly. Yeah.
which is
The same.
which was really
Yeah.
weird.
That was. Yeah. That was very cool, and also it's super good, to see everybody. And I said this with Jesus on when we did our Going Meta last Tuesday. I was like, okay, you go there and you talk to people, and it's one of the this is probably the only conference you go and you don't have to explain yet what graphs are and where to what to do with them. Everybody knows. Everybody is excited about the technology. Everybody is a user
Yeah,
or a fan, and that is such a different vibe. That's very good.
that's true. And I talked to a lot of the speakers and also like the exhibitors, and they were super excited about like just the knowledge of the people that attended, right? So there were in all
Hmm.
the sessions there were lots of questions and lots of engagement, and so that was really nice to see, unlike at other conferences where you usually, when it comes to the question time, no one has a question. So, but here, this time at least, people had lots of questions and really engaged well with the speakers, which was really great.
Yeah, yeah, that was good.
Exactly. And we had this kind of all fun thing where I could attend the keynote twice doing my demo. Because Google had a hiccup in the GCP region that I ran the Aura free database in, which was well timed, like the 40 minutes that I did the demo. They had
Yeah,
like intermittent issues. So I got a second chance to go get on stage with Jim as well.
yeah,
And
exactly. I mean, that's yeah, that's sometimes
that's life, right? So demo
yeah,
gods. But I also wanted to
exactly.
run it live. I didn't want to like pre-record stuff, but
No,
because we
yeah,
wanted to show how really it works, right? Exactly. Super. And I think that's what we want to show today as well, right? So the GraphConnect attendee graph as such.
exactly. So let me change this setup, and here we go. All right, so let's get going. So discovering Neo4j AuraDB free is the talk today. We'll spin it a little bit differently today. We show a new thing that later on. Technically, this is the recap, or this is what's going to happen. I'll quickly explain what Neo4j RDB free is. We pick a data set. Again, if you have a data set you'd like us to explore, if you think something is interesting, the size doesn't really matter. It can be a very small set. It can obviously it has limitations. If it's super big, then it's not gonna fit into RDB free. But even if you have a small set with a couple of hundreds, thousands nodes, maybe even, that's perfectly fine. We could have a look at that. If you have something like this, send it our way. And then we're gonna think about some questions we will ask, determine a data model, sketch it up, and load and query. AuraDB free is the free version of Neo4j AuraDB, which is the graph database as a service. There is a free tier, which is 100% free. All you need to do is register with your email address, basically. The limitations we have is 50,000 nodes and 175,000 relationships, but that's
Actually, Alex, there's some news since last week. These limits got increased, actually, so we can look at it later on, but we can update our slide. It's now, I think, 200,000 nodes and 400,000 relationships, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, that's a significant update. Okay,
yeah, that's more than doubled.
I missed that. Yeah, okay, that's
it's really fresh, so it's almost like brand new. So
okay, wow.
So we can see this hopefully later when we create our new AuraDB free instance.
Okay, let's look at that later. But that's big, and that is a huge update, I think. So that's great.
Yep.
So so you have more space now. It's still free forever with you. So unlike Sandbox, which you might have used before, it stays with you. Sandbox was shut down after 10 days. You have access to Neo4j browser and Bloom, so you can query and visualize your graph. And if you want to try it out yourself, there's a link. I'll post that link into the chat in a second as well. And what we do today is we look at the GraphConnect attendee. So Michael and I, we did a presentation during GraphConnect 2 weeks ago, and we showed a few things. So I'll briefly jump over the slides we presented there before we dive in. So the general idea was, who is at GraphConnect, or who is generally at a conference? You sit there in the big auditorium, hundreds of people around you. You don't know who's around. So if you don't have a clue what the people are doing, at GraphConnect, we all had the idea probably that graphs were the key common interest from everybody, but there's more and other points of interest that people have and overlap. So if you then take the data, and what we had was first name and company anonymized, so that means we ended up with picking Google and product names, because I think because of the Idaho data center down, but it's just some random stuff, so it couldn't be traced back to the original people. We have graph use cases, so what kind of graph applications people are interested in, what job are they doing, what country they come from, and then we had a couple of soft questions like favorite food or movies and sports or vacation type, stuff like that. So just to have it a little bit more on the fun side as well. And then this is generally the same thing we do in our sessions anyway. So we model the data on a sketchboard or in arrows or something, then we put it in the data importer to load it up and then visualize it. So you will see that in a second. Also the data model, skipping over this for now, and then a couple of questions just briefly, exactly what we want to ask from this kind of data set. Where are people coming from? What graph use case do they have? And then we can go a little bit more into detail, communities based on similarities, where are your industries located and stuff like that. So we see that. With that, I'll switch over to your screen, Michael. And I think we are basically ready to check it out.
Okay, so I would say let's start by creating a new AuraDB free instance on AuraDB. So I already logged in, and we call it graph or attendee graph. So Iowa was the region that went down. So today we're choosing Belgium instead. Of course, that's closer to us.
Also closer.
Just copying the password. And while it's creating this instance in the background, I actually just want to save the password here. And while the database is being created, that takes a few minutes. I just want to use the opportunity to do two things. So first of all, at GraphConnect, we had a lot of really good sessions. So the recordings of the sessions will be public in 2 weeks or so. They're currently being edited. But if you're interested in any of those, all the sessions have been recorded and you can watch them at your own leisure in 1 or 2 weeks as such when the editing is done. So that's really nice. And then the other thing that I thought could be nice is if you look at some of the pictures that were taken at GraphConnect. So I hope you can see this.
Yes.
Well, so this was kind of at the beginning when we set up the exposition hall, people discussing. So this is Kay, for instance. This was, I think, one of the training classes. As such, folks chatting. Then the expo reception where we had some beers. Dev Zone with Jenga. Here are a bunch of sponsors as well. Here's like the Dev Zone arc that we had, and you see like in the background a little bit of the Dev Zone, and a little bit more of the expo halls. Our Neo4j stickers, Marina are kind of pointing people to the right places. And it was really nice to see everyone. So here's also the video booth we had at the Dev Zone. There they go. Here's the video booth we had at the Dev Zone. I'm not sure why it's jumping around. Where people could do recordings of their own testimonials and so, which was cool. And then lots of our sponsors had a lot of fun as well at the conference too. So I'll try to get these pictures also uploaded to Flickr. I tried to do it last week, but somehow the Flickr UI is really weird and complicated, and so I need to figure out how to do this. And so we had Emil on stage for the keynote here, me giving the demo twice, and so there was a lot of fun. Alicia doing her demo as well, which was really great and
That was a super good demo, yeah.
And then Jonathan from Pfizer being on stage talking with Emil, which was also really nice. Lots of good
So
food.
maybe if you missed the GraphConnect keynote, then check out our YouTube channel, right? I mean, there is
exactly. So if you go to YouTube.com Neo4j, then the GraphConnect keynote is here on the screen and in the stream, and also Jim's keynote as well. So
yeah.
they are actually the product keynote, I think. Oh, this is the preview, I think. This is the keynote.
That's the playlist, I think, yeah, or something.
Yeah. So there's a GraphConnect playlist, and this GraphConnect playlist will then also contain the other videos as well. So if you subscribe to this playlist or to the account, then you also get notified when the other things are.
Yeah, definitely. Subscribe to the Neo4j channel, of course.
Yeah, definitely. So it was a pretty cool time, meeting a lot of people, having a lot of fun, and so I really enjoyed being there with everyone again, even if Austin was really hot. So we even had an escape room that I had to set up, and Alex actually was in one of the groups that took the escape room.
Yeah, that was cool. I mean, I like that. That
was this one here.
Well done.
Yeah. With a Graphy employee database and so on. So that was so I can definitely recommend coming to the next event. And actually, speaking of events, while we're talking about it, Neo4j Graph Summit. So Graph Summits are coming, and if you're because you're in Asia Pacific and European time zones, probably not in the US time zones. So there are lots of Graph Summits coming for Europe, like 13 of them, from Paris all the way to London, Manchester, Germany as well, Tel Aviv, and Copenhagen, Stockholm, and so on. And for Asia Pacific, we'll be in Singapore, Bangalore, Sydney, and Melbourne as well in July. So please note this and mark the dates so that you can attend one of the local events if you couldn't come to GraphConnect. And even if you were at GraphConnect, come and hang out with your Graph friends at the Graph Summits.
Exactly.
So, and of course, now our database is running, our attendee graph, and now we can get started. And you see a difference here. Instead of the 3 buttons that we used to have, like the query, import, and explore, we now have just one button. It's called Open Workspace. And the workspace
and you see
is
the difference in the limitations.
Oh yeah, exactly. So there are now 200,000 nodes and 400,000 relations. Really good, well spotted, Alex. So definitely more room for your AuraDB free databases, which is very nice.
Yeah.
I also will work with the Aura team on adding more starting data sets. So instead of just having the movie graph at the beginning, we'll add more of the data sets that you have in Sandbox to the AuraDB 3.0 as well in the next few weeks, which I'm really looking forward to. So that's why it's also one of the reasons to have these larger limits so that more of these data sets fit in. If you want to learn more about the product, about the workspace and want to sign up for early access, you can go to neo4j.com/product/workspace. And here's a sign up link where you can sign up for early access of the workspace. So workspace is kind of a unified surface as such, which pulls all the tools together into a single UI with consistent visual design and user experience and so on. So we are currently in early beta, to say so, and it's something that, or early alpha probably is probably more correct. And so this is something that will also grow and expand and get better over time, but it's already quite nice as such, as you can see. We'll see in a few seconds. Cool. And so if I click on Open Workspace, it opens Workspace in a new tab, which then has these import, query, and explore options here. Let me just make this. And I need to connect to my database. Currently, this is not yet taken the URL from Aura, but that's coming really soon, that it automatically takes the URL. So I just paste my URL and my password that I saved. And then I can connect. And so you see it connects immediately. And then let me clear this out. It's just an old one. And then we can go to a data importer and get started with data modeling and data import. To show you what you want to import, I imported the CSV also into a Google Sheet. And actually, I took the previous version that we had. So originally, before the Google mishap happened, we actually used IKEA product names as first and last name for people to replace the original names and artificially generated company names as well. So from that perspective, so you'll have a lot of fun Swedish IKEA names now in the database. And so you see we have first name, last name, company, role, state, country, industry, job function, and participant ID in our attendees sheet, where the first 3 columns are anonymized and the rest is from the real data. Then the expertise has participant ID to expertise. So you see that the same participant has multiple entries here. So there are one-to-many relationships. Similar with use case. So what use cases are people using? So this participant has selected all the use cases, which is fun. And then the last thing is what Alex said in the app. You could basically add your favorite sports, favorite vacation place. And so we have this here as well as an additional file too, right? So the idea is to add these to our database. So if you go back to Workspace in the input tab, it's basically similar to data importer that we've seen before, except that we don't have to manage the connection anymore. So that's kind of handled already centrally here, right? So let me just add these files. So we have our attendees, use cases, expertise, and the favorites. And then we can basically start adding our data. So we would, for instance, add our attendee node, which we can map to a file. So we select our attendees file and select the first name, last name, job function, and participant ID as attributes. We use the participant ID as an ID. And then you see the attendees already solid. Then we can pull out, for instance, something like industry and map this from the same file, from the attendees file, and pick the industry here. And then in industry is our relationship type, and we select industry as ID, and then we map the person from participant ID to industry. So what we are doing here is basically pulling out the different attributes into separate nodes so that we can then correlate attendees via these attributes as such, right? So we have an industry, and then something like lives in state. So we have our states as well here. And then we say lives in, and map this with the attendees file from participant ID to a state, and so on. So the same we can do with something like use case, where we this time pick the use cases file, where we map our use case from the file to it, select the same as ID, and then has use case as relationship type, and then again map participant ID to use case, right? And like this, we continue for the other attributes as well. So role and company and expertise and so on. So, but I don't want to bore you watching me doing this all manually. So I already saved this as a data model. And so we have the attendees here, we have the expertise and use cases. And the only file that we want to add is the favorites that we talked about, the sports.
You see the green
Yep,
square. So once you click
exactly. So the green squares say basically these fields from the CSV have been mapped already. So we've already done all the other ones. And then, so here is sport or sports. And then our favorite would be from favorite sport. And you just rename this into sport. And what did we call this? Favorite sport? Something like that?
I think so, yeah.
Something like this. Favorites from participant ID to sport. And we do the same with vacation, where we take it again from the favorites file and take out favorite vacation, edit this into just vacation, and select this ID, and then we say favorite vacation and map this again. So I already mentioned that in the future, all this mapping will dramatically be improved because it will be able to auto map stuff as well. So that's something that will be coming. I'm really looking forward to that because otherwise it's not so much fun to just map things, right? So, so there will be more improvements coming down the line for this. Okay, and this is now our graph, and now I created an empty relationship, which I didn't want to do. And now I basically can hit import. So all our stuff has been mapped. Everything is green. And we can just hit run import. And in a few seconds, it should have imported our data. Of course, it's also not so much data after all. So it took 7 seconds. And so you see imported the attendee CSV. As you've shown before, you can see the import query here and the constraint as well that it uses. So you can copy this into your own code or scripts as well if you want to use this. And it sends basically lists of dictionaries or hashes along as parameters, which are then used as rows. And so you can batch basically the inputs as such. Right, it gets the attendees, the use cases, expertise, and then down here also the favorites as well. I could have also imported first the existing model and then added the favorites as well, because all these queries are idempotent, so it doesn't, you can run them time and again, and it doesn't add additional data if the data is already there. Right? So from that perspective, that's quite nice. So you can also incrementally add stuff to your data model and just run the input again, or You could also start a new data model where you just have the participant or the attendee with the participant ID, and then it would reconnect to the existing attendee as well. So
that's a very important feature, I think, and very interesting to know, because you probably will, you work on your data model, you iterate, you change things.
Exactly.
And when you have a new source of data you want to add to it and make your model richer, you don't have to remove everything. You can just add to it. And relatively easily. Yeah.
And so the next thing that we want to do is just explore a little bit our data that we have in here. So you see that currently the scene is empty. So what we need to do is basically to go to perspectives. We can remove this one. Oops, now it's something broke, I think. Just do this again. I think that was a bug that I ran into before. Yeah. So it just generated now the perspective automatically by restart, but you could also have just done generate perspective here on a blank one. So you see in our perspective, you have attendee role, company, industry, use case, expertise, state, country, sport, and vacation. And we can use this perspective. Actually, we should give it probably a name, rename, and then here, attendee graph. Yes. Use this perspective, and now we can explore this the data. So for instance, we could say in our state, so for instance, we were in Texas, so we can say in our state Texas, we have attendees, and we want to see, for instance, which industry they're from. So that could be something that I want to know. And then I can see basically these are our people. So as we see that this currently uses participant ID, and we want to change this to first name and last name. So you see the Swedish IKEA, and we could also add job function here. So we see also what kind of person this is. So as you zoom in, we see this practitioner, software engineer, and so on. And we see what kind of industry. So there's education, healthcare, life sciences are a bunch of people, fintech. What is this here? Software, a lot of software people, as you can see. And now you could explore other things. So for instance, now can go to healthcare, life sciences and say which other attendees are from this group, for instance, right? And then kind of continue my exploration here as such. But I could also look at the data in a different way. So for instance, I could also say kind of what, let's say, industry attendee use case. And if you use this, or probably not like this, what I actually wanted to do is something else. I wanted to do, and then use case, do we have healthcare or something like that?
I think it was it life sciences?
Yeah, use case, life. So let's start with use case. Use case, life sciences.
Healthcare, so life sciences. Yeah, here we go.
Sciences. Exactly, and then we say attendee, and then, for instance, industry. So we want to see kind of what industry are people from life sciences from, right? So that this would be our use case, and then we see, okay, of course, there are a bunch of folks that are from the life sciences industry, but also from data consulting, digital publishing is probably like publishing papers and things like that. Consulting, quite a number of consulting, fintech, tech investment, more publishing folks, big data from a bunch of software people. So you can also see what are the overlaps between the two as well, right? So which is kind of interesting. And then you can continue to explore this. So this is basically if someone doesn't know anything about Cypher or Neo4j, then they can just go from import to explore, and then kind of get their first idea about their data in a graph shape, right? And so you could also do other drill downs from that perspective, right? Or you could also say, okay, if I want to, let's say, country, state, attendee. So this should give us some data, and then we could, for instance, use hierarchical layout to kind of look into where are people coming from, also such as in hierarchy. So these people are from Florida, and then Florida is of course in the US. Actually, if I leave off the attendee here, clear, and then I see like the different countries. But here I map basically the country directly to a state, so that's not an empty thing like Denmark is kind of state Denmark. But here we have, for instance, UK, which has all the different states like London and Kensington and so on. And here we have Germany with Hamburg. What is this? Berlin, probably. Baden-Württemberg, Hessen. Right, so you have like other countries that are going together as well. So you can also use the hierarchical layout to render things in different ways. So, cool. And of course, in query, we can query the data in like Neo4j browser. So query is a simplified version of Neo4j browser, and something that we, for instance, can do here is called schema visualization. So you see basically our model that we had in our data importer is here in the graph as well. So if I look at this, you see then it's actually the same data model as well. And here we can also start asking some of the questions that Alex put out in the slides. So for instance, one question was, where are people coming from, right? So we could say, we have our attendee, and the attendee lives in a state, which is in a country. And we, for instance, just want to see how many people come from which country, right? So let's see. So we see we have 500 people from the US, 43 from Great Britain, and then more from Israel, Netherlands, and so on. Right? So definitely more of a US centric audience because of the travel and COVID and all the other stuff that happened.
Yeah.
So another question that was is basically which industry has which use cases, if I remember correctly, right, Alex?
Yep.
So we have our use case. Our use case is connected to an attendee, which we can actually leave off because currently we're not interested in this attendee itself. And then we can return the use case, the industry, and how frequently they appear together. And then this is our count or our frequency. And then we say order by frequency descending limit, let's say 50. Then we see that software is actually dominating quite a lot, right? So, so software is covering all the use cases. So we could actually say here, where not I.industry is in this. So, and now we see life sciences use case overlaps with life sciences, knowledge graphs are life sciences, graph data science and fintech, graph data science and life sciences, and fintech, that makes sense. Fraud detection in fintech makes also sense, right? So you see basically things that you would usually know from your common sense is also appearing in the data as such, right? And another thing that we can do is look at the favorite vacations. I think that was something, right, that we wanted to say.
We had
actually,
yeah, exactly. Vacation and sports.
Actually, what I wondered, something that we didn't look at last time is how do actually the states the different states map to, let's say, if you say country US, how do the states map to vacation? Where do people do vacation basically? It's actually an interesting one. So, so for the US, we find our state. As frequency, and then we again say order by frequency, descending limit 50. So we find our state in the US and the vacation, and then which one appears how often, basically. So, okay, that's the general one. So Texas is beach, California's beach is also, Texas is also mountains, New Jersey is also beach, California mountains, beach mountains, Texas is also a few, the city,
Well, there
Pennsylvania.
were only three. I think you were able
Oh, you
to
had only like
choose from.
beach,
Yeah, it was
city, and
drop down
mountains.
menu, so you could say I go to the beach, I go
Mm,
to the mountains, or I stay in the city, or I go to the city.
okay.
And so we have
Yeah, Washington State is also obvious that mountains are our favorite. We could do the same for sports if you wanted to. If you say here, we would say sports. And then so that's pretty well distributed, right? So between hockey, American football, soccer, and golf, it's almost evenly distributed, at least for the top few.
yeah.
Such. By the way, something nice in Workspace is the browser thing. He has gotten sortable columns, which is
Oh.
nice. And you can now also paginate and show like different. So if you have more than X, then you basically can paginate through the results as well.
So if you do this in browser, you don't have to do the order by anymore. If you leave out the order by.
Yeah, but then you have to return everything, right? So then you can't. So if I remove this here, then it returns 77 results, and then I can sort by frequency here. But
Yeah,
something is
but
wrong,
you could.
as you can see.
Ah,
So this
yeah.
works, but something is wrong here. So there we need to see what's wrong here. But
Okay.
for text, the text sorting actually works, right? But the numeric sorting
Does not
seems to
work
have a
right.
bug.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
but
and it's
at
true.
least you're
If you
getting
put
there,
in,
right? So it's
yeah, if yeah, it is, yeah. If you put in a limit 50 without the order by, you get just 50 random records. So you don't
exactly.
have
Then you don't know. So then you
yeah,
have to return all of them as such, right?
yeah, and
And I
that's a
hope that
probably
also in the future we'll also get like inline search so that you can also search on the client for certain subsets of the data. So
yeah,
I
that would be
could
nice.
just enter something like Missouri or Colorado here, and then it would show me only the
Hmm.
things here. So that's something that I also looking forward to. Cool. The other thing that I quickly wanted to show, actually, there are two more things that I wanted to show. One is, so we talked about kind of which attendees are similar, right? So they are similar when they share a number of attributes as such. So something I wanted to do is actually create an additional relationship here. So if we say our attendees, attendee number one, share some attribute with attendee number two, and we want to say our two attendees, A1 and A2, and our count is how often they share this attribute. And let's say where this frequency is at least greater than 3. So they have to share at least 3 attributes to be similar as such, right? What we can then do is create a new relationship between the two attendees where we say they are similar. And A2. In merge, you can actually leave off the directional arrow for these kind of undirected relationships. Then it will create only one relationship between the two, which is quite nice. And then we can set the frequency as weight on the relationship as well, right? Which is quite nice. So this creates a bunch of new relationships. Let's see how many. I forgot actually how many will be created. Let's see. Come on. This doesn't like us right now. Did I do something wrong? A1, A2? No, it looks actually okay. What we can probably do is, if I abort this, if you just return how many it would create, we can probably, so this would create 26,000 relationships. So we can probably specify a range. Let's see what comes back here. Still 25,000. 15,000. Yeah, it should actually be okay, so I'm not really sure why it took so long. It's only 26,000 relationships to create. And our database is not yet full.
No.
So in our demo it actually worked. Let's see. This is interesting.
Maybe it's Belgium this time around.
This is really interesting. I'm not sure what it's doing. But what we can do here is actually so if you do from 4 to, let's say, 9 or something like that, it should be fewer. Okay. I just wanted to demonstrate the principle. I need to check what went wrong there. So it created 2,400 relationships. And now we can actually see the similar relationship here. And if you fetch all similar people without any limit, then it returns the 2,000 relationships. I hope. Yeah. Oh no, somehow in the background it created all the other relationships as well. So that's a little bit unfortunate. Let me just get rid of them and recreate them.
That is a lot of relationships now. Yeah.
Okay. This goes away and then we run this again here. Okay, so now we have a bunch of relationships, 7,000, so that should be okay. So, and let's say we limit it to 1,000 or something like this. And so now we can see here which people are similar, and actually we can now in the formatting, we should be able to select the similar videos. Oh no, the formatting doesn't look yet. Okay, but usually we could see the similar the weight on the relationship. So you see, this is a bunch of folks that are
Bloom.
Yep, exactly. So I just want to show you basically this is kind of a cluster of people that are very similar, and then you have outside clusters that of people that are separate. But of course, we can go to our Explore tab. Let's just move this very quick. We can go to our Explore tab. We need to refresh our perspective to add this new relationship. And now we can say attendee similar to attendee, basically. And then look at our data. And it finds 230 nodes and 7,000 relationships. And
the loading. Did you specify similar?
You don't have to, because there's no other relationship between the attendees.
That's
but
right.
what I think I did wrong was it was still set to the other layout, and I think the tree layout has a problem with so many relationships. So let's do this again. Attendee. We can also specify similar if you want to attendee.
No, I was yeah.
So this.
If you only have the one, that's correct. You don't need others. But
and the only thing that we want to do is for similar, we want to show actually the weight on the relationship. So, but I'm not sure if we killed the layouter. No.
no.
As
Do
such.
you want to
I can check
refresh the whole
reload.
thing? Yeah.
Let's do this.
Do a
Missing.
new one.
See, it was still on.
Yeah.
So this should be now the right layout. Okay. Next attempt. Attendee to attendee. Fetch the data. Okay, there we are.
Here we go.
Right, and now we should see if we zoom in, it actually shows the number, the weights on the relationships as well, right? So now we can see basically this is this big cluster of people, and then there are external clusters here as well outside of the main cluster as well. And we could use now the filter to, for instance, say, okay, we only want to see people with a weight of, let's say, 5 to 7 or so, right? And then we can remove elements, but they still have at least 5 things overlapping. So this is either a use case or an industry or favorite vacation place or so, right? So, so from that perspective, they're pretty similar. This cluster is pretty stable here. So even if we remove a number of relationships, it's still very stable. So this was one thing that I wanted to show. And now you could, on this similar relationship, you could run graph algorithms like clustering and Levin and also something like betweenness and closeness centrality. So you see which one is the most important node in this cluster as well.
Hey, Michael, because it was just in chat, can you click on the little share button on top right at Bloom? Somebody wanted to know how they can share their visualization in Bloom.
So you can also export this as a screenshot, so as PNG, and also export the CSV of the visualization as well. So all the things that are visualized currently are then exported to a CSV.
Okay, yeah. So every time you visualize something on Bloom, you always have this button on the top right where you can click on it, and then you have the choice between CSV or a screenshot, and from there you can embed it in a website if you want a visualization, or if you need a CSV for something else, then you can take it from there.
Exactly. So the last thing that I wanted to show is how we could take our data in Neo4j here and turn it into a GraphQL API. Right? So because that's kind of the next step in our low-code journey. Right? So we just connect to our database here, Neo4j. Let me to get the password again. And then what we can do here is we can click on generate type definitions, which basically inspects the database and then will generate the GraphQL type definitions for us. So we have our attendee with all our relationships, like the similar relationship, the sports, vacation, and so on, right? And all the other types as well: company, country, expertise. Country has a relationship to state, expertise, industry, role, and so on, right? And so these field names are a little bit verbose because it has to cover both the relationship type as well as the end node label, because they can be different. And that's why it's basically this is the relationship type. Sorry, this is the end node, and this is kind of the relationship type. So that's why it's a little bit verbose. So if you don't want this, then you can, of course, edit this generated type definition. But for the time being, I'll just leave it here. And then if you click on build schema, it gets you basically an editor. And now you can start querying this data. So for instance, I can say attendees, options, limit 10, and then I want to, for instance, have the first name, last name, and job. So this is our minimal query as such, right? So we get 10 attendees with their first name, last name, and job, and now we can follow the relationship. So for instance, we can find which industry these people are in. So it fetches the industries. Then we can also say, okay, we could also say who else is in this industry, because from this industry we can again go to the attendees. So we could say which other attendees are in this industry, but it also has an aggregate. So it's basically can also tell us how many people are in this industry, which is quite nice. So you would, for instance, see in the software industry 107 basically as well. And so you can also query stuff like this. And
That's cool.
And if I want to give it a different name, so for instance, if I just want to call this like industry count, then I just can prefix this here, and then it just uses my alias that I provide here. And what I can also do is I can add something like a filter query. So there's not just options, there's also a where clause. And then I can say, for instance, let's say job function.
Do you have to type it, or can you click on stuff on the left hand?
You can also click
Explorer?
on stuff here. So this Explorer has basically now, I have like all the predicates here. So like, for instance, I could say, if I hadn't typed this, I could say, for instance, where is it? Job function contains, I just click on this, and then I can enter my string here. So for instance, if I want to have practitioners, then I can just put pract here. And you see the little checkbox here. So you can also, if you don't want to type an autocomplete, you can also do this structured here as such. So this would only give us practitioners as such, right?
Yep.
And so you can kind of continue to query across the data, and it's like a tree query, so you can also go down. So for instance, I can go now here, for instance, lives in state, lives in states. I can return the state, and then from the state go to country, in country, and look at the country. So I can also go multiple levels deep from this here, right? And so that's quite nice. So this is basically my the Neo4j GraphQL API library running in my browser, so I don't have to run a node or a server. So just for building the schema and testing it, it's quite nice that I can directly run this inside of my browser. I could also pass parameters here. For instance, if I wanted this limit to be a parameter, I just would call this limit, and then here I would say query limit is a string, and then it says sorry, int, because it checks the type. So string was wrong, right? So it checks the type, and then actually complains that I don't have parameters here. So I would say limit colon 5, for instance, and then if I run this, then it only returns 5 people, right? Or if I want to make this practitioner parameter, then I can also say this is basically $job, and then I have basically job string, and I can pass in here job, for instance, analyst. Let's see if you have analysts. Yeah, right. So and then it uses that as well. So which is quite nice.
Super nice, yeah.
As a low code, so I can basically go from import through Explorer to GraphQL without having to write any special code to get started with, right? So I can basically show what an API could look like on my data here as well.
That's cool. Will the GraphQL Toolbox be somehow integrated into Workspace with a link?
At some point, I think yes. So currently it's kind of being developed and it's in beta standalone.
Yeah.
but in the longer term, it will. By the way, you can also add multiple queries here, so then it adds basically more queries that you can basically switch between and so on. Yes, and then basically will be integrated in Workspace as such.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Exactly. So, and again, if you want to sign up for the Workspace Early Access, you can go here to the sign up under Product Workspace. And
put the link in chat again.
Yeah. And was there anything else that you wanted to show, Alex? Was there any question that we wanted to answer from our data, from the Graph Insights that I forgot?
No, I think we covered it, or you covered it. We had that was just the overview we wanted to give, so a
Yeah.
little extension of our session.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. I mean, yeah, I think that's what we had. A couple of people were interested in trying it out, so
Yep. Sign up here,
so,
and then
so
you.
I'll put the link in chat, and people are interested to try it. So yeah, give it a spin, try it out. If you have feedback, if anything's breaking, then post your findings in the community forums. So that would be, I guess, the perfect place. So we are aware of what's not working right, and yeah, be aware.
Yeah.
This
And
is
I think
early.
there's also feedback. So if you go to neo4j.kenny.io, I think there's also Neo4j Aura. At least you can provide data importer, explore, and query.
Yeah,
Here are the
that
different.
would also work.
Right. Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good. Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching. If you are interested in more Neo4j content, I will be back on Thursday this week actually with a special session on data visualization for a crime investigation with Alex Law from Kinevis. So I'm looking forward to that.
Nice.
That's taking place on the 23rd, this Thursday, 6 p.m. Central European time. So that's 9 a.m. Pacific. So it should be a good spot for everybody, Europe and westwards. So a little bit of a better, not so great for the Asian community, but
But it will be recorded as well, so you
it
can
will
find.
be recorded. Yes, so we'll be
Mm.
putting it on YouTube afterwards. But that's going to be an
And
interesting session.
yeah. And in general, if you want to watch past episodes, you can always go to our Discover AuraDB free page, edit a playlist, or
Yeah, exactly.
the page on neo4j.com. And also for the other sessions on YouTube, we have the different playlists, so you can follow also the or office hours and other things as well. So we have also our going meta, for instance, here, or the PHP sessions.
Yeah,
And the
and
other live
speaking of the
streams.
PHP, there was the final episode on the PHP series was last week, but on Wednesday this week is a best of a special stream with 5 or so guests from the community.
Oh, super.
So that's going to be a public, Q&A discussion board panel like live stream with a couple of guests around the PHP community. So if you are interested in that, join Florent and Glenn on Wednesday.
Cool.
So that's that. And the final question to answer: when does early access of Workspace come out? It's already out. So what you need to do is basically click on that link I put in chat earlier and register for it, and then you'll be able to. I don't know. Do you know if there is everybody let
I
in, or
need to ask, but I think so. Otherwise, create
yeah,
imaginable, drop me an email to michael@neo4j.com, and I'll try to get you in
yeah.
front position as well.
Sign up via the form that's on the page, and you should be able to get in fairly quickly.
Cool. But remember, it's still alpha, So it's still very early, and it's currently in gather feedback mode as such. So not everything is working like it's working in other places, and also intentionally, for instance, the browser, aka console, aka query, will be a little bit different in how it behaves and what features it offers from currently Neo4j browser, because this was also an opportunity for us to preset the stage a little bit and get rid of some of the features that are not necessary anymore or not as important in this context as well.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. Yeah, on LinkedIn. Good point. I'll put it in the LinkedIn chat as well. Give me a second. There is no, for some reason it always doesn't go over, but I'll put it there in a second now.
Otherwise, you can also just go to neo4j.com/product/workspace and then
exactly.
right.
Okay.
Super. Sounds good, and I think we'll see each other next week again.
Yeah, exactly. We'll be back next week. So if you have anything else in the meantime, obviously use community forum or Discord and reach us there. Other than that, take care, everybody. Have a good rest of your week and stay safe.
Super.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye. Take
Bye,
care.
Alex.